Welcome back to the Life of Vitellius, episode 15. How are
Yeah,
you, Big Daddy Ray Harvey?
doing okay. Like you said, I'm surprised Vitellius has lasted this long, but there are things outside of Rome that we need to cover to give the wider war context and stuff that Vespasian, spoiler, is going to have to deal with when he's in Rome.
So, in the last episode, we were talking about the revolt of the Batavian Germanic
Yeah.
tribe that have been producing some of the best, very tremendous soldiers for Rome for many
Big,
decades.
beautiful. Exactly.
Big, yeah. People tell me they were just the best.
Right.
And they decided they'd had enough.
Yes.
It was seems to have been growing over several years, but it got to a point where the Roman recruiters were raping their young men and then sending them off to war. And they were like, "Listen,
Yeah.
the reach arounds we've been tolerating for years, but
But
when it gets to
just
penetration,
too far.
uh, that's too far." Yeah.
Too deep, I think is and they were being led and driven crazy and being worked up by syphilis. And we know how well that, really gets
Nothing
you
drives you
going.
crazier than syphilis, particularly when
Syphilis
you've
and
been anally raped.
yeah, a
Then you
good
end up
dose
with
of
syphilis, you know.
a good dose of syphilis in the morning and you're gonna spend the rest of the day fighting, spitting mad, and they are. And they've got a wonderful opportunity.
Now, speaking of syphilis,
Yeah,
you hinted last time that he may have been on good terms with Vespasian. There
right.
do seem to be some suggestions in the ancient sources
Mm,
that he may have had some communication
right.
with Vespasian.
Yeah.
We don't like it's a little bit vague. We
Mhm.
don't really know for sure where or what or how or who, but we
Right.
do know that Vespasian was stationed in Germania.
Mhm.
In I think Claudius sent him there in the early 40s. And
Yes.
then Vespasian, went to Britain and supported the
Yes.
Roman invasion in Britain. We know that syphilis was very in the British invasion. I
It
mean,
was deep in the
deep. There was a
sorry,
lot
go
of syphilis running around Britain at the time. So it's
silly.
quite,
I'm
quite,
joking.
quite possible.
Right. Yes. They could have rubbed elbows. I mean, who knows? Who knows?
They could have given each other syphilis. I
Support.
don't know, syphilis could have
There
given
yeah.
Vespasian, we
Yes.
don't know. But, yeah, it's quite possible that they knew of each other, if not knew each other from
Right.
those days. The Batavi were great soldiers, very important soldiers. Vespasian was played a pretty significant role. He was the legate over there. So,
Yes.
but there is some history, we'll get into it, of communication between
Mm.
Antonius Primus,
Yeah.
and syphilis and or uh, guy running the army in the Rhine at the time, Hordionius Flaccus.
Great name.
Uh, yeah.
Great name. I did
Now,
yeah.
certainly, trouble on the border at
Right.
this point in 69 is probably going to be useful to Vespasian.
Yeah.
Obviously, Vitellius is trying to get as many troops as he can. He's already pulled in the legions from around the area.
Oh, yeah.
They both have been pulling in legions from around the area, obviously from around the empire to
Right.
support either side. As these legions have been sucked in for all of the civil wars at this point, and they're
Mhm.
trying to recruit more. So, it can prevent trouble on the borders. Can prevent Vitellius from getting his hands on more conscripts, and also it can be used as propaganda against Vitellius's leadership skills, his
E
capabilities as an emperor. There's trouble at
right.
the mill
Or
kind
lack
of stuff.
thereof. Exactly. He
Yeah.
can't even run a fucking empire. Oh my god. Yeah, that kind of thing. It's effective.
The flip side, though, is if
Right.
Vespasian gets the job,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
gonna have to deal with all of this. So
Yeah.
he's sort of kicking the can down the track. But as we know about Romans,
Right.
outside of JC,
Right.
they're not really good at planning ahead. Uh,
Not their forte. Not
yeah, they're
their
a bit. They come from the Trump Musk school of
right. Yes.
administration, which is just break shit and
Yeah.
we'll worry about what comes next. Later on.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're force users who don't have the force. They're Spider-Men who don't have the spider sense. I mean, they're like, "Oh, yeah, no, that's bad, right? Are you gonna hold me accountable?" I hate that. Anyway, yeah, no, they're kind of stumbling along, but you're right. JC was the ultimate a plan for a plan for a plan for a plan for a plan down the road. These guys are just winging it. I think Vespasian does a little bit better, but certainly not Vitellius.
So even the contemporaries, though, writing about this don't seem to be entirely confident. Tacitus makes some vague allusions, to wit, he writes, to avoid the opposition which he would encounter as a public enemy were he openly to revolt from Rome. He's speaking about
Mhm.
Civilis here. He
Right.
affected a friendship for Vespasian and a zealous attachment to his party, and indeed a letter had been dispatched to him by Primus Antonius, in
Mm,
which he was directed to divert the reinforcements which Vitellius had called up, and to keep the legions where they were by the feint of an outbreak in Germany. The
right,
same policy was suggested by Hordionius in person. He had a bias towards Vespasian and feared for the empire, the utter ruin of which would be very near, were a fresh war with so many thousands of armed men to burst upon Italy.
right.
But
Mhm.
look, I love Tacitus, don't get me wrong.
Right.
A deep, deep love for Tacitus.
Love his
He's
style. Yeah.
erudite, he's funny,
Mhm.
he's sarcastic,
Full of
uh,
himself.
full of himself, but he's also a Flavian era historian who would have had a natural tendency to absolve Vespasian of responsibility. And, we must assume that any evidence incriminating Vespasian probably wouldn't have survived the years of the Flavian dynasty. Not a
Good
good
point.
look.
Yeah, yeah,
But
for posterity. Yeah.
Tacitus is happy to throw Antonius Primus under the bus.
Oh, yes.
He doesn't have a lot of love for him.
Mhm.
So the suggestion is that Syphilis pretended a friendship with Vespasian and
Right.
was given instructions by Antonius, who we know, again from Tacitus, wasn't really following Vespasian's orders. He'd gone off on his own to invade Italy. I don't have time to wait for orders. Too
Yeah.
busy. Too much to
Yeah.
do. Gotta go. I'm a man of action, not a man of
Right.
waiting. Let's go.
Right.
The way that
I am a
Tacitus tells it, Vespasian
right.
said, just fucking wait until Mucianus arrives and I arrive. We're gonna
Yeah.
wait through the winter. We're gonna wait for the seas to calm down. No hurry.
Yeah.
We're gonna blockade
That's
Italy,
that's
gonna
the
take
plan.
control of their grain.
Yes.
And Antonius was like, "Well, where's the fun in that? I wanna go
Yeah.
kick some ass, take some names."
Yeah.
So, not Vespasian's fault is the way that Tacitus likes to
Exactly.
frame it.
Well, I think, Antoninus was saying, "Tell me the last time they made a statue of someone who was really good at waiting, who
Yeah,
not with his sword out, but had his arms crossed or maybe was playing, jacks or whatever." No, no, a man of action, get
jacks.
shit done. I don't know whatever
Is that
games
still
they
a
would have
thing?
played.
Kids still
I
play jacks?
I I don't think so. I don't know. Okay, masturbate, whatever. I don't know. But the point is, there's no statues to someone who played it safe. That's not how that works. And again, with syphilis, there's going to come a part in the story. Hopefully, we cover it, but I'm not sure. Is where he's going to when he's about to attack a fort. He's going to be like, "You all declare for Vespasian, or I'm coming at you." I mean, it's a great political cover, and it does make your enemies pause. And if you can make your enemies pause or doubt themselves, that is a very good psychological tactic. And again, he's been working with the Romans for decades. He knows how to play the game.
Yeah, that's the other aspect of this, you're right, is, and we've seen this before, but these guys know Roman. They
Yes.
know how the Romans fight. They've been fighting
Right.
with them for decades at this
Yeah.
point, and they know the tricks, they know the secrets, they know the weaknesses and the strengths.
Yeah.
Uh,
And not only
mm,
that, but as if we get to it, I'm not sure how much we're going to cover, but as they're attacking a Roman fort, they know how to make siege towers and they know how to make these various things.
mm,
However, having said that,
mm,
watching someone else do it and then
mm,
doing it yourself, two very
mm,
different things. And
mm.
we're going to see what happens.
You discovered that with lovemaking,
I
didn't you?
did.
Some
I
time ago.
watched.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
eventually the cops caught me and said, "Sir, you." Anyway, but I like to feel that I learned a lot.
Now, rather than declare war on Rome itself,
Right.
Syphilis was sneaky. He set up a
Yes.
decoy, it seems. There was this other Germanic tribe, the Canenifates. They sort of lived near the Batavians and seemed to been a breakaway either from the Batavians or from the Chatti. They had the same language, the same traditions. They
Mm.
lived close by, somewhat connected. Canenifates apparently means the boat masters.
Oh, I like that.
They lived on the water as well as the Batavians, and they were led by a chieftain by the name of Bruno,
Mhm.
who was the son of a chief who had apparently faced down Caligula, and
Nice.
they kind of had a rep. These guys,
Right,
his family. I
right.
read in Tacitus, I think, that the very name of their family meant like rebel or something
Ah,
in
yes.
in their language.
And rebels are gonna rebel. That's what they do. Yeah.
And we
So,
don't
yeah,
really know the story, but somehow Syphilis convinced Bruno
yeah,
to attack several Roman forts.
yeah. Actually, 2 German tribes, the, Frisia and the Canafates, and one attacked by land, one attacked by sea, and they're able to take out the closest, but albeit smallest forts to the various German tribes. They get to some more they get to some more Roman forts, excuse me, but the prefects burn down those forts so they can't be used against them and they run away. So it starts out really well. But now that Rome has got this trouble, this is when Syphilis, and you hardly ever hear this sentence, this is when Syphilis is going to come in and save the day. He's going to go, whoa, whoa, don't worry about this, sir. And he's talking to Flaccus, who is the commander of the Rhine legions, the Rhine army. I will take care of this. So he gives himself perfect cover. It's a great disguise, which means he's going to be able to move troops even closer to the Romans. And they're thinking he's helping them. This guy has thought some stuff through.
Yeah, it's a cunning plan. I've got Tacitus's
Got it?
version of it here.
Right. Please.
Talking about Bruno, he says
Mhm.
he assailed by sea the winter quarters of two cohorts, which was the nearest point to attack. The soldiers had not anticipated the assault of the enemy. Even had they done so, they had not the strength to repulse it. Thus
Right.
the camp was taken and plundered. Then the enemy fell upon the sutlers and Roman traders who were wandering about in every direction, as they
Yes.
would in a time of peace. At the same time, they were on the point of destroying the forts, but the prefects of the cohorts, seeing that they could not hold them, set them on fire.
Mm.
The standards, the colours, and what soldiers there were concentrated themselves in the upper part of the island under the command of Aquilius, a centurion of the first rank, an army in name rather than in strength. Vitellius, in fact, after withdrawing the effective troops from the cohorts, had loaded with arms a crowd of idlers from the neighbouring villages of the Nervii and the Germans.
Mm.
Syphilis, thinking that he must proceed by craft, actually blamed the prefects for having deserted the fort, saying that he would himself, with the cohort under his command, quell the disturbance among the Caninifates, and
Right.
that they had better return to their respective winter quarters. It was
Mm.
evident, however, that there was some treacherous design beneath this advice, that the cohorts would be dispersed only to be more easily crushed, and that
Right.
the guiding hand in the war was not Bruno but Syphilis. For indications of the truth, which the Germans, a people who delight in war, could not long conceal, were gradually coming to light. When stratagem proved ineffectual, he resorted to force, arranging in distinct columns the Caninifates, the Batavians, and the Frisiae. The Roman army was drawn up to meet them not far from the river Rhine, and the ships, which, after burning the forts they had stranded at that point, were arranged so as to front the enemy. Before the struggle had lasted long, a cohort of Tungrians carried over their standards to Civilis. The other
Ooh,
troops, paralyzed by the unexpected desertion, were cut down alike by friends and foes. In the
right.
fleet, there was the same treachery.
Yeah.
So, to summarize,
Mhm. I can
syphilis
right,
is
right.
like, I'll
Nothing
save you.
nothing to
Don't
see
worry
here.
about it.
I'll take care of it. Yeah,
I'll take care of it.
yeah,
But
yeah,
A, they already didn't trust him. He'd been arrested twice.
right.
And
He had
B,
priors.
yeah. And B, some of his German troops were like, we're going to betray the Romans. Don't say anything, but
Well,
you know.
well, this is gonna work. Well, see, what syphilis didn't know is that some of the Vatavians, and this is the worst, they actually started a podcast. Worst time to do this, and they started bragging of, "Oh, we're tricking them. No, but this is the whole thing is a feint. We're going to go in." And do you remember that scene in Braveheart where the two forces come together, and then the Irish auxiliary working for the English suddenly turn and join the Scottish? That's what happens here. The right, I can't right or left flank of the Romans are coming in, and those people, Batavians or whatever they were, they turned and they joined the
Hungrians.
Germans. There we go. And the other auxiliaries for the Romans were pretty much slaughtered, but this gave the Roman legions proper time to head back to their fort. So again, it was just one disaster after another for the Germans because Syphilis, as he does, has thought things through.
The Tungri were a a Gaulish
Mm.
slash Germanic tribe. According to Tacitus, they were the people who were first called Germanic,
Oh.
meaning that all of the later tribes who were referred to as Germanic, actually, it comes from the Tungri.
Hmm.
They were the
Oh,
first
okay.
Germanic people described, according to Tacitus, by Julius Caesar as Germani Cicerenani.
Right.
So there are several places in Belgium and Germany and the Netherlands called um, something like Tungri, Tongeren, Tongerlo Abbey, Tongerle, Tonger. Anyway, yeah, that one. It all comes from them. So they were a Gaulish Germanic slash tribe that, yes, all of a sudden, Order 66 in the year 69 was issued and they just
Right.
turned on the
Oh, it's
Romans.
fucked up.
Fucking,
Yeah. So
well,
they have to
fucked up, but
retreat.
but
Yeah.
brilliant
Oh,
strategy. Like,
absolutely. Yeah. 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 He gave the
the
whistle.
Romans
They
can't
turned.
trust anyone. Yeah.
Oh, you
Uh,
can't trust anybody. If you have to pay them, you can't trust them. That's what Cam says about me to me all the time. I mean,
mm,
it's a truth. It's
mm.
a universal truth.
Only when you're high, though.
Then I'm very trust because I tell
And
the
then you
truth
won't
because I
and you
don't
won't
care.
remember in the morning. Yeah.
I don't. I really don't.
Now, the commander of the Rhine army at the time was a Roman senator, Marcus Hordionius Flaccus,
Good name. Yeah.
and
Flack master. Yeah.
he
Sorry.
sent 2 Roman legions under the command of Munius Lupercus, which also had some auxiliaries and cavalry supplied by Gauls and Batavians to
Yeah.
support these guys that are getting attacked.
Yeah.
And as Tacitus says, did not go well. He writes, Civilis, surrounding himself with the standards of the captured cohorts to
Mm,
keep their recent honors before the eyes of his own men, and to terrify the enemy by the remembrance of defeat, now directed his own mother and sisters and the wives and children of all his men
damn.
to stand in the rear where they might encourage to victory or shame defeat. So
That's
we've seen this before.
That's good. Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
if you
yeah.
try and fucking turn and run, you're
Guess who's
running
there?
into the women
That's
and the
right.
children
Yeah, and how
who
could
are
you let them down?
yeah,
Yeah.
who are gonna call you a big pussy. So
Poussey, I think is the word. But yeah, no, it's like you're gonna fight to the death, to your death, because you can't possibly give up knowing that if you
you're not
lose, the
getting any
y
pussy.
well, 1, you're not getting any Poussey, but 2, those Romans, will
Yeah.
they come over and slaughter every single one of them? And let's be honest, the Romans know how to slaughter some women and children. They've
Mm.
been doing it for centuries. They've got it down.
And you're particularly not getting pussy if you've got syphilis.
That's right.
Uh,
That's Syphilis, see, this was the one flaw in his plan. Syphilis would go, "Are you with me?" And they're like,
mm,
"Yes, kind of." I hope they get
they
some
all
a
had
shot.
T-shirts printed up, I'm with syphilis," and people were like,
Mm, let's get Stan and Barry on that, shall
he
we?
would be
Because
like, "It's
yeah,
pronounced Civilis. I keep telling you, it's a hard
damn
V,"
it.
and they're like,
That's right.
"No,
Yeah.
we're Romans,
Yeah.
it's really Civilis," and yeah, but,
A
you know.
hard V, like VD, it's still not good. The point is, yeah, so what do you do? Yeah. But it's another defeat for the Romans.
Oh, I've got more Tacitus here. He
Oh,
says, "The
please.
war song of the men and the shrill cries of the women rose from the whole line, and an answering but far less vigorous cheer came from the legions and auxiliaries. The
Mm,
Batavians exposed the left wing by their desertion, and they
right.
immediately turned against our men." Yeah, the Romans still hadn't learned. They still had Batavians
God.
anyway.
Yeah.
Still, the legionaries, though their position was alarming, kept their arms in their ranks. The auxiliaries of the Ubii and the Treveri broke at once in shameful
Yeah.
flight and dispersed over the whole country. They didn't attack the Romans, they just took off.
Right.
On that side, the Germans threw the weight of their attack. Meanwhile, the legions had an opportunity of retreating into what was called the Old Camp. Claudius Labeo, prefect of the Batavian horse, who had been the rival of Syphilis in some local contest, was sent away into the country of the Frisia. To kill him might be to give offense to his countrymen, while to keep him with the army might be to sow the seeds of discord. Okay,
Ooh,
so they
I
they
like
figured out at some point, yeah,
yeah,
probably best to get rid of the Batavi. About
right.
the same time, the messenger dispatched by Syphilis came up with the cohorts of the Batavians and the Caninifates, while by the orders of Vitellius they were advancing towards Rome. At
Right.
once inflated with pride and haughtiness, they demanded, by way of remuneration for their march, a donative, double pay, and an increase in the number of cavalry, things
Mhm.
indeed which Vitellius had promised, but which they now asked, not with the thought of obtaining them, but as a pretext for mutiny. Flaccus,
Exactly.
by his many concessions, had produced no other effect but to make them insist with more energy on what they knew he must refuse. Treating
Right.
him with contempt, they made their way towards Lower Germany to join Syphilis.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
the Batavians that were heading towards Rome to support Vitellius said, "Hey, we
Yep.
want more money,"
Yes.
knowing that they would get turned down, and they're like,
Ex
"Fuck you," and they broke away and went to join the rebellion.
right, which is, yeah, all part of, Syphilis's master plan, and so now he's got even more troops, and then he's gonna get even more troops soon. I don't know when we're gonna go into that, but things are just it's blue skies for Syphilis. I mean, just Syphilis everywhere. Things are looking great for him.
Make syphilis great again. Yeah, that was
I wanna
his
see syphilis
slogan.
on everybody's face. I wanna say I can't believe I said anyway,
Oh,
where were we?
never let it be said we don't try and keep a joke going way too long.
Beat
Um,
it to death.
so 8 cohorts of Batavian veterans had joined the revolt. Vespasian sent
Damn.
troops apparently to relieve the legions. They joined the revolt as well.
Mhm.
Tacitus has a telling of a speech that Civilis gave, which is quite good.
Okay.
I think this is when some Roman troops turn up to sort of support the Roman legions. He
Right.
gives a speech to them where he says, "There is no alliance as once there was. We are treated as slaves. When does even a legate come among us? Though he come only with a burdensome retinue and in all the haughtiness of power. We are handed over to prefects and centurions, and when they are glutted with our spoils and our blood, then they are changed, and new receptacles for plunder, new terms for spoliation are discovered. Now the conscription is at hand, tearing, we may say, forever children from parents and brothers from brothers. Never has the power of Rome been more depressed. In the winter quarters of the legions, there is nothing but property to plunder and a few old men.
Yeah.
Only dare to look up and cease to tremble at the empty names of legions. For we have a vast force of horse and foot. We have the Germans, our kinsmen. We have Gaul bent on the same objects. Even to the Roman people, this war will not be displeasing. If defeated, we shall still reckon it a service to Vespasian, and for success no account need be rendered."
Nice. Good
Got
PR.
another speech here at a different time, but close to this. Tacitus has it. "It is by the blood of the provinces that the provinces are conquered." I
Mm,
fucking love that
I
line.
love that. Yes.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Think
sorry.
hold on. Think not of how it fared with the armies of Vindex. It was by Batavian cavalry that the Edui and the Averni were trampled down, and among the auxiliaries of Virginius there were found Belgian troops. To those who will estimate the matter all right, it is evident that Gaul fell by her own strength. But
Mm,
now all are on the same side, and we have whatever remnant of military vigor still flourished in the camps of Rome. With us, too, are the veteran cohorts to which the legions of Otho lately succumbed. Let Syria, Asia Minor, and the East, habituated as it is to despotism, submit to slavery. There are many yet alive in Gaul who were born before the days of tribute. It was only lately, indeed, that Quintilius Varus was slain and slavery driven out of Germany. And the emperor who was challenged by that war was not a Vitellius, but a Caesar Augustus. Freedom is a gift bestowed by nature even on the dumb animals. Courage is the peculiar excellence of men, and the gods help the braver side. Let us, then, who are free to act and vigorous, fall on a distracted and exhausted enemy. While some are supporting Vespasian and others Vitellius, opportunities are opening up for acting against both.
I like that's stirring. That's stirring stuff, and he touches a lot of different important notes there. So Syphilis has got about 15,000 men. He's got the 9 trained cohorts of Batavians that you just mentioned. He's got cavalry, and then Germans start showing up almost daily going, "Hey, you're fighting the Romans, we want in." So his force is swelling, and, I don't wanna jump ahead too much, but the next big attack that he wants to make is at a very well-established Roman fort called Vetera, and that's where the next biggest Roman force is at. So if they can take that, again, their way is clear for a while. So that's their next thing, that their next impediment that they have to get through. But again, things are looking great for him, and it just seems like everything is about to break his way.
But yeah, like I mean, okay, like when Tacitus has these speeches,
Yeah.
we don't know where he's getting that from.
Yeah.
Don't think there are any
Right.
scribes there writing them down.
Right.
But the idea in that speech, in all those speeches, is
Mhm.
really, really powerful. Like this idea that the conquered were conquered by themselves. Caesar managed going back into Caesar's day,
Right.
and I've been re-listening to our Caesar series, as you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh, you know, Caesar was able to get Gallic tribes and Germanic tribes and Belgian tribes to fight each other.
Mhm.
He would promise certain freedoms to one tribe to go and fight, and they all hated each other, as you said before, to
Yeah.
varying degrees because they'd been
Yeah.
fighting against each other for generations.
Mhm.
They were all there was no unification until
Right.
guys came along and managed to unify them to fight the Romans from time to time. But before that,
Right.
they were tribes, and there was tribe on tribe warfare that had been going on for millennia.
Yeah.
And so Caesar was able to use that to get them to fight each other to help him conquer them.
Yeah.
And it's guys like Syphilis that are saying, you know what? Let's fight together against Rome
Yeah.
for our freedom. Let's
Our
not
mutual
fight each other, kill each other. Then he
exactly.
goes and kills a bunch of Gauls
Yeah.
who aren't joining the cause. So,
You're
you
with
know,
us or against us. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
No, I gotcha. Yeah. But it's like what the British and the French do in Africa and the Middle East. They draw lines on the map. They divide these people. These people start to feel different, and they just go at each other. You're right. Caesar knew how to pull those strings. And here's one Germanic person going, "No, let's reverse. Let's use what the Romans have been using against us." And again, so far, it's working like gangbusters.
Vercingetorix, I think, was the first
That's
guy we
that's what I
saw
was trying to
in the
remember his name.
text.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
But he was a Gaul. But
Yeah.
Vercingetorix obviously tried this during Caesar's day and was successful for a while till Caesar crushed him.
Right.
Um, but I was explaining to my son Taylor the other day,
Mhm.
yesterday, we were talking about the United States and tariffs and all of that kind of stuff. And Taylor was saying to me, why doesn't the rest of the world just rise up against the United States and go, you know what, fuck you, we're going to put tariffs on you? I said, well, it's tricky
Right.
uh, because the US is still powerful, both economically and militarily,
Yeah.
big trading partner for most countries, not the biggest in most cases, but big
Big enough.
and big enough to
Yeah.
be scary. And
Yeah.
most of us have trade deals and alliances, and we don't want to mess with that. I said, but what's probably going to happen if things keep going in this direction is over the next 5 to 10 years, these countries like Australia will be gradually pulling away from the US and
Yeah. Not
gradually
worth it.
moving more into the BRICS
Mhm.
slash Chinese trading bloc.
Right.
And eventually, I mean, China's already our largest trading partner, a far
Mhm.
bigger trading partner than the United States is. But militarily, we still say we're under US protection.
Right.
Um,
But
but
Trump
there
comes
will
along and
come a
says, "We're not gonna defend you." And so what
yeah,
was is not. So you're
yeah,
there's no motivation for you to stay with America because they're literally saying to your face, "We will not fight for you." I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut, but the very thing that
no,
was holding us together is now being, cut in twain.
and there will come a point in time when political leadership here will say, "You know what?
Exactly.
We used to be
Exactly.
part of the British Empire. We
Right.
severed ties with them after World War II. We joined the American Empire. Now it's time to sever ties with them and
Had a
become
good
part of
run.
the Chinese
Yeah. Yeah.
Empire."
Yeah. We got through the Cold
Um,
War together, and now it's time to move on.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, I expect to see that transition happen in the
Yeah.
next decade around the world. And, this is what he's trying to pull off against the Romans as well. But he's doing
Exactly.
it, he's ripping the band aid right off here. So
Right.
Flaccus assembled his centurions and asked if he should weed out any more rebels in the troops.
Right.
There's some people that are pushing back. There's some talk going on,
Yeah.
and they're trying to figure out, should we go and attack? Should we not attack? Should we execute any potential rebels? Should we kick out the Batavians? I mean, all of their auxiliaries. These guys, as we know, all
Yeah.
of the legions in Germany had been pulled into Italy to support Vitellius,
Mhm.
they're relying heavily on locals,
Oh,
Gauls,
yes.
Germans, Belgians, and they're like, "Well, should we kick them out? Should we punish them? What should we
Yeah,
do?"
we've only got so many men, but what should we do? Exactly.
And they kinda decided that they couldn't afford to get rid of all of the auxiliaries and the cavalry,
Right.
but they couldn't trust them either. So they can't go out and engage with Civilis because they can't trust these guys. So the best thing to do is just to wait for instructions from Vitellius
Yes. Yes.
and order all the troops to stay locked in their barracks
Right.
until instructions arrive.
Right. And we've seen enough military history to know that if a force never leaves its fort, it's not really doing anything. It can't project power. It can't threaten you. Everybody knows where you're at, and you don't know where anybody else is at. It's a bad recipe, but they're desperate. They don't know what to do. They're not getting instructions. There's a lot more of those other guys than there are of them. It's the best decision based on, wanting to see the sun rise tomorrow.
But
Right.
you also have troops. I mean, this is like Antonius Primus, who
Hmm.
want to be on the offensive. They know
Yes.
that
Hardcore.
we're
Yeah.
sitting targets sitting here.
Exactly. Exactly.
The They don't know who to trust.
Hmm.
Stories are already spreading that maybe the Vespasian guys are working with Syphilis,
Right.
and the fact that Flaccus is telling them not to go out and fight makes them
Ah,
suspicious that Flaccus is working
reinforces.
for Vespasian. These guys have all sworn an oath of loyalty to Vitellius. Again,
Yes.
we know Vitellius used to be a commander in this region, so a lot of these
Right.
guys know Vitellius. Vitellius was quite popular in
Hmm.
this region too. You know, he was
Yeah.
fairly lax general, as I recall, and used to just throw lots of parties and shit.
The best kind.
So wasn't great in terms of discipline. So uh meanwhile, they're locking themselves in their camps, but they had neglected to protect their supply lines.
Yeah, the weak spot. Yeah. Can I ask a
So
question real quick before you go on? I thought I'd read somewhere that Flaccus was secretly, well, maybe not so much a Vespasian man, but he believed that Vespasian was going to win this, ultimately win this civil war, based on Vitellius's shortcomings, and that maybe he was kind of positioning himself to survive after the civil war is over. Is that right?
the sources are a little bit light on it, but
Right.
Tacitus does suggest that Flaccus was sort of
Mm,
on the Vespasian side, but
gotcha.
like all these guys, but didn't know how to tell his troops that at this stage. But as we'll see, they turn on him anyway. So I think that's where we'll
Yes.
leave this with the Germanic and Gallic tribes heading towards Castra Vetera, where
Mhm.
there's a camp of about 5,000 legionaries, the 5th Allodae and the 15th Primigenia, who are going to get surrounded and have their supply lines cut, which kind of reminds me of Antioch that we've been talking about in the Renaissance series. As the
Right.
Crusaders did to the Muslims at Antioch, but we're just doing lots of blockades of fortresses and camps at the moment. That's what war is all about.
Yes.
And we'll do that next time on the Muppet Show.